Judges ready? Opponent ready? Okay, let's start. Okay, hello, my name is Adan Ezparza. I am the affirmative speaker. I'm here today to tell you why the United States federal government should renew the ban on assault weapons. Let me start by framing the issue. An assault weapon is a high-capacity semi-automatic weapon of war that serves little recreational purpose. In fact, the only reason for its existence was to commit mass murder in war scenarios. There is no constitutional right or need for individuals to own these assault weapons. A ban could reduce the number of mass shootings while maintaining our constitutional right to bear arms. Currently, in the status quo, the United States has the highest rate of mass shooting in the entire world. Let's begin with the Sandy Hook incident, in which a man took a Bushmaster semi-automatic rifle into an elementary school and ruthlessly butchered 20 children and 6 women. These children were stripped of their rights to life and the opportunity to live their lives by a man with the ability to carry an assault weapon. Friends and families will be forced to remember this horrific incident for the rest of their lives, despairing over the question, could I have done something? Then there was a movie theater incident in Aurora, Colorado, where 12 people died that night, including a 6-year-old girl. Remember her name. Her name was Veronica Moser Sullivan. She was watching that movie that night with her mother, same with other families and couples that night. Sadly, none of them knew what was about to happen. In total, 70 people were injured. It's not just these 2 incidents. There's dozens of cases just like these. If we don't do anything about it right now, then we're just going to allow more mass massacres to happen. Think of all the families affected by these incidents. There are 3 characteristics that make the assault weapon dangerous for civilian use: their degree of lethality through combined range, rate of fire, and accuracy over range. Some people believe that any restrictions on guns violates the Second Amendment. However, the Second Amendment is outdated and was written in a different context. When the amendment was adopted in 1791, the general public made up the militia to which the amendment refers. By this definition, only the militia and other state security groups, such as the National Guard, should possess the right to bear arms, and even if the Second Amendment is taken out of context, the Founding Fathers would have never anticipated that weapons would evolve into mass murder machines that could spew hundreds of bullets per minute. Those who do not support the ban on assault weapons believe that the solution is to allow everyone to keep assault weapons for self-defense. Consider, though, how many brawls break out every day. If everyone has a gun, these fights may not end with just concussions and black eyes. More people will die. Lethality in assault weapons, why are they so deadly in the first place? The effect of their accuracy over range and semi-automatic firepower enables more targets to be acquired at distances offensively, but these attributes also keep the shooter's enemies, potential victims, and law enforcement at bay while they acquire and execute more victims. Essentially, these combined attributes result in effective killing fields, so wide the ability for a potential victim, armed or unarmed, or law enforcement to stop the shooters decrease to a point where a mass killing in progress cannot be immediately and effectively stopped. Consider range as the far side of a classroom, the length of a school corridor, or across a mall. Every second that a mass murderer uses a semi-automatic assault weapon means that another person is dead. The only way to stop violence is to ban assault weapons. Allowing easy access to assault weapons guarantees that terrorists, criminals, and mentally unstable people will use them to commit future acts of mass murder. It's that simple. Try as we may, we are not going to prevent some of those people from becoming terrorists, criminals, or mentally unstable. But without those assault weapons, it will be easier to prevent massacre-level events. So, why make it easy for them to do harm to their fellow human beings by giving them easy access to weapons of mass destruction? The bottom line is that there is no reason why weapons of mass destruction of any sort, chemical weapons, biological weapons, or assault weapons, should be easily accessible. For 10 years, there was a ban on the production, ownership, and the use of assault weapons in the United States until Congress and the Bush administration allowed it to lapse when it sunset and came up for reauthorization in 2004. A serious response to the tragedy in Connecticut requires that Congress act to reinstate the assault weapons ban before the children of other families fall victim to the fantasies of some other mentally unbalanced individual or the ideologies of a terrorist who has been empowered by our failure to act. So I leave you with this closing statement. A ban on weapons today saves a life tomorrow. Thank you. Open for cross-examination.
So can you tell me specifically what the assault weapons ban classifies as an assault weapon?
In the beginning of my speech, I said their degree of lethality through combined range, rate of fire, and accuracy over range. Those are the characteristics that make up an assault weapon. So anything that falls under those characteristics will be banned.
So, but your plan specifically is to renew the ban from 94 to 2004. So can you tell me specifically under that ban what qualified as an assault weapon?
I can name you a list of weapons that were banned if you would prefer that.
I'd prefer if you gave me certain characteristics of a weapon.
Oh, well, like I said before, like anything that falls between that combined range, so like long range weapons, rate of the ones that have high rates of fire, and accuracy over range, the only thing that classifies under those three categories were considered assault weapons.
Okay. And you also mentioned in an instance that renewing the ban on assault weapons is the only way to stop all violence.
No, I said the only way to stop to mass murderers and police criminals and insane people is to reduce the to completely ban the assault weapons from gun requirements.
So the assault weapons ban, how does it solve for everyday violence that occurs through shootings or gun-related violence?
These massacre level events are key things that disrupt our society, and by reducing the amount of weapons, of specific assault weapons, and making it harder for these mentally unstable people to acquire them, will drastically reduce these incidences.
So besides a ban, besides a overall ban on assault weapons, what does the ban do to prevent other guns from coming into the hands of these mentally unstable people that you mentioned?
By reducing these weapons that, like I said, have incredible high capacity, high caliber weapons, these are the weapons that make the deal mass destruction. So by reducing those, we stop these big events from happening. That will minimize the damage because we still have our Second Amendment to protect.
And opponent ready? All right. My name is Brigette Rodriguez, and I am going to be arguing in opposition of a renew on the ban on assault weapons. The assault weapons ban from 1994 claims to ban, and quote, semi-automatic rifles with detachable magazines and 2 or more military-style features. But what exactly is a semi-automatic rifle? There is no real concrete definition. Some states have defined this as a rifle sold with high-capacity ammunition magazines, but these firearms are not unique in this. These assault guns are really just ordinary rifles, and about half the guns in the United States also have detachable high-capacity magazines. There are also roughly already 130 million detachable magazines in circulation, which the ban would not affect. It is hard for legislators to effectively regulate guns under such conditions of the ban without banning half the handguns in this country and many hand rifles as well. Instead, lawmaking has focused on cosmetics. The federal ban applied to all semi-automatic rifles with, again, detachable magazines and 2 or more military-style features. These features were listed as things such as flash suppressors and bayonet attachments. The only thing that is unique about these rifles is their menacing name and look. And the thing about many of these military-style features is that rather than affecting the lethality of a gun, all they do is make the gun appear more menacing than it is, and they are very easy to remove. They would maintain their same lethality without being classified as assault weapons under this ban. An outright ban without any real definition of what qualifies an assault weapon makes things worse rather than better, as many of the features mentioned by the law are simply cosmetic and could be removed without altering the gun's ability to shoot. For example, after the '94 ban, manufacturers were able to either ramp up production before the ban went into effect or cosmetically tweak their products to get around the law stipulations. So not only does the ban do nothing about the weapons already in circulation, as the grandfather clause under the '94 ban means that assault weapons already in circulation and ammunition and high-capacity magazines, nothing will be done against those. So not only does it do that, but not only does it not do anything about what is already in circulation, it also gives manufacturers the easy loophole of an outward change to get out of it. During the '94 ban, the rate of mass shootings didn't change over the course of the 10-year law and has not gotten worse since. The law expired in September of 2004, making 2003 the last full calendar year in which the law was in effect. According to the FBI crime statistics, 390 people were murdered with rifles in 2003. And in 2014, which is the year most recent for which FBI data is available, rifles were used in 248 murders. That is a reduce by over 100 murders between 2003 to 2014. And not only are rifles used in far fewer murders over a decade following the expiration of the '94 gun ban, they're also used in a smaller percentage of homicides. In 2003, when the gun ban was in full effect, rifles were used in nearly 3% of murders. In 2014, they were used in barely 2%. Also, the majority of crimes in the United States, including most mass shootings, are overwhelmingly handgun crime, and the average number of rounds fired in the course of a criminal shooting involve a semi-automatic pistol in between 3.2 and 3.7 rounds, less than the 10 capacity minimum under the AWB. My point in presenting all these statistics is to show that the assault weapons ban, in fact, does nothing to affect gun violence that is occurring in this country, including mass shootings. In fact, bans could perhaps even stimulate public outrage and more gun violence. Most gun violence does not result from assault weapons, and besides failing to address any major source of violence, a ban would serve only to aggrandize gun lobbyists and make meaningful gun control legislation harder to pass. America's gun debate suffers because of unreasonable extreme positions taken by the NRA, but gun control advocates who push for bans on one kind of rifle simply because of its appearance also contribute to the problem. Such bans don't reduce gun crime, but they do stimulate passionate opposition from law-abiding gun owners. Which brings me to my next point. It would be preferable to pass a gun regulations alternative in which the USFG would regulate its guns in a similar fashion to Canada, which is that for them, under the Firearms Act, to obtain a firearms license, all applicants must undergo a screening process, which includes a safety course, criminal history and background checks, provision of personal references, and a mandatory waiting period. Canada's rate is about 7 times lower than that of the United States in terms of homicide. Therefore, it is better at solving for gun violence than would be the ban. And in fact, the ban itself would prevent the alternative from being passed, because as I stated, an outright ban would mean that we would be unable to pass this type of meaningful regulations that actually solve in the future.
The first question I have to present is that how can like reducing what classifies as an assault weapon?
I'm going specifically under the 1994 to 2004's ban definition, which is that a semi-automatic rifle with detachable magazines and 2 or more military-style features.
So pretty much cosmetics.
Yes, but I'm saying that in terms of the ban that you are trying to reinstate. That is what your ban would define as an assault weapon.
Okay. Okay. Moving on to the how would passing this ban stimulate violence and outrage?
So, for example, after the 1994 ban ended in 2004, the amount of assault weapons that were purchased actually went up in the country, and this is as a result that many gun lobbyists who are not in favor of gun control are opposed to an outright ban. And also due to the fact that a ban presents a solution without actually doing anything to solve the problem. And so people think things are getting better and that therefore we do not need to do anything else, when in fact nothing has been done, and instead we are left in a position where we have a ban that does not work and where we are unable to pass meaningful legislation.
Okay. Moving on to how would Canada's plan solve?
I'm not saying that Canada solved. I'm saying that the United States federal government should regulate its guns in a similar fashion, which is that in Canada they have the Firearms Act, which means that to obtain a firearms license, which is to be in possession of a gun or ammunition, applicants must undergo a screening process, which includes a safety course, criminal history and background checks, provision of personal references, and a mandatory waiting period. And the way this would solve would be that if we are able to control where our guns are going to and who has these guns and for what purpose they have them, it would solve better for gun violence because we would know whose hands our guns are in.
First, I would like to start off by saying that First, I'd like to start off by saying about my definition. What was my definition of an assault rifle? First, I started out my speech by giving you the 3 characteristics that make an assault rifle, or what it makes an assault rifle, which was their degree of lethality through combined range, rate of fire, and accuracy over range. Like she said, those cosmetics never really affected the lethality of them. So that means that because they're so lethal, according to my definition, that through the combined range, rate of fire, and accuracy over range, their lethality is still coherent and seen. That makes them an assault weapon. So those cosmetic features were never really a difference between if it's an assault weapon or not. So that makes her entire point about that it wouldn't work because they wouldn't ban a lot of types of guns illogical. All right, moving on to that it won't stop the reduction of violence. Well, first of all, I would like to say that allowing easy access to the assault weapons guarantees violence. But if we could reduce that violence by any means, by any percent, we must do it. If that means that we stop 100 murders, even if it means we stop one death from happening, we are morally obligated to do so. So that's why we have the imperative that even though the statistics may not seem that high, we have to save that life, no matter what. And in reality, the gun ban won't affect anyone. It won't outrage the NRA. Gun bans have already happened. Why do you think we can't have RPGs? Why do you think that machine guns that shoot rapidly, like 1,000 bullets per minute, are already banned? It hasn't angered the NRA. It won't anger the NRA because it's illogical to have these assault weapons in the first place. Moving on to her alternative, her Firearms Act. There is no reason why we cannot do both. They're just because we could definitely ban assault weapons and put these strict Firearms Act regulations that Canada's doing on every other gun that we're still allowing, like the pistols and shotguns, because those are still causing deaths. So clearly, by doing both, and because they're not mutually exclusive, we could potentially save even more lives, even if it means saving even one more life than the ban was already going to do. By saving more lives, by saving more people, by preventing more mass massacres, these are the key reasons why you must vote affirmative. Okay, so pretty much what I'm saying here is that many guns will still be affected by the ban because, like I said, those cosmetics are not going to be considered to what makes an assault weapon. Like I said, the lethality over range, the rate of fire, those are what make an assault weapon. The statistics might seem against us, but saving one life is still one life, and that is definitely needed. And her alternative, there's no reason why we can't do both. Saving more lives, saving more people, that's why we're debating this right now. Therefore, I leave you with my closing statement again. A ban a weapon today saves a life tomorrow. And there's no reason why we shouldn't save more lives through the alternative, through my plan, and doing both at the same time. Thank you.
First off, what the affirmative is arguing for here and what they are doing is to renew the ban on assault weapons that was in place from 1994 to 2004. They provide you their own definition, but that is not the legal definition that applies under the ban. The legal definition, which would be put in place if you voted for affirmative, is that an assault weapon is a semi-automatic rifle with a detachable magazine and 2 or more military-style features. The military-style features that I mentioned are mostly cosmetic, and therefore, this is why the assault weapons ban is unable to solve for crimes committed through the use of assault weapons. Because although my opponent may claim that lethality is what classifies an assault rifle, that is not legally what would make a weapon an assault rifle. Instead, what makes it an assault rifle is its appearance, while its lethality can remain the same whether its appearance is changed or not. As I said, in 1994, manufacturers were able to cosmetically tweak products to get around the law stipulations. The ban provides them an easy loophole to get out of the change. So, while they claim to ban assault weapons, in fact, all they do is provide a band-aid solution that only focuses on the cosmetics and the appearance of a rifle instead of on its actual lethality and what it can do to harm people. Therefore, mass shootings, mass violence, everything that they mention will continue to happen because these assault weapons won't really be gone. They will just look different. And also, the reason why we cannot pass both the gun regulations alternative and the ban at the same time is because realistically, we can only go one way or the other. In the past, Obama has tried to pass comprehensive gun control around multiple areas of gun control, such as what the affirmative is trying to do now. But it has always failed because, as I said, the NRA is in direct opposition against excessive amounts of gun control. Therefore, we must be selective in what gun control we choose to pass. And if you must choose between passing the gun regulations alternative or the assault weapons ban, it is the gun regulations alternative that you must go with. Because, as I said, this alternative would mean that for a person to own a weapon or to be in possession of ammunition would mean that they would have to undergo a screening process which includes safety courses in the use of guns, a criminal history and background checks, which solves for guns being put into the hands of mentally unstable people, provision of personal references, and a mandatory waiting period. So what this does is not only does it address the problem of mass shootings and mass violence that occurs in the United States, but it also addresses what the affirmative can't, the everyday violence that happens. Because, as I stated, the average number of rounds fired in the course of a criminal shooting are 3.2 to 3.7 rounds. That means that an overwhelming amount of shootings that occur in this country would be unaddressed under the assault weapons ban simply because they do not qualify as an assault weapon. Therefore, the affirmative has no solvency due to the loopholes in their ban, because detachable military-style features are exactly that, detachable. These weapons will be kept in circulation as well as ammunition and high-capacity magazines that are in circulation, because under the grandfather clause of the '94 ban, these weapons are allowed to continue to be sold and used legally. They do nothing to solve or reduce gun violence in this country, whether it be through mass shootings or everyday violence. They simply give an illusion that the problems will be solved, when in reality, they continue to happen, and we will no longer do anything about them because we think that they are solved, when in fact, the only way to solve for these issues is through meaningful gun control legislation, which is regulations on guns, so that we can assess who is in control of the guns in this country, for what purposes they are using them, and to prevent them from falling into the hands of dangerous people.
All right, we go back to the definition. I still stand by my definition that the degree of lethality through combined range, rate of fire, and accuracy over range is what defines an assault rifle or assault weapon. But if you don't believe me, through her definition, some guns will still be banned, like the AR-15, the most popular rifle in America. Because even if you keep just one gun off the street, that's one person that's less that will be shot. That's one life you still will save. Even if you don't believe my definition, through her definition, we still solve for a lot of the violence that's going to be happening in our streets. Moving on to her loophole argument, that even though, never mind. All right, going on to the alternative. That's a better argument. All right, the alternative. So saying that gun regulations must be passed and that's very strict for the Congress to pass this and that no options will be available. Well, if both our impacts are important, that many people are dying because of this, why wouldn't Congress pass this? There's no logical reason why the Congress will refuse to save lives. They will pass the plan. They will save lives by doing both. Why not pass the Firearms Act? Why not pass renew the gun ban, the assault rifle ban? There's no logical reason why they shouldn't do both. Through both, you'll save the most amount of lives, and that's the goal of this entire debate, to see who could save the most amount of lives. And clearly the affirmative is winning on that argument, that even if only a limited amount of guns are banned, even if not some criminals will still achieve this, we still save lives, and lives is what are most important here. And I'll go on to the meaningful gun control regulations that she was saying. The assault weapons ban is a meaningful regulation. This is why we're debating this right now. The reason we're debating this is because it's meaningful, is because we need to see how these massacres should not be just ignored by the government. There's a purpose, there's a reason. We need to react, and this is the reaction. The affirmative plan, through doing both, we saw the most lives, we saved the most lives. And we must not forget the damage that has already been done by these weapons, like the Sandy Hook incident. We should not forget Veronica Moser Sullivan. We should not forget these people that we have lost. We must make it harder for humans to hurt other humans, because that is not morally right. We need to make it harder for them to get these weapons of mass destruction. We must do something, and that's why you must vote for the affirmative team. Thank you.
So 3 reasons why you should vote for the negative team in this round. First, the affirmative has no solvency due to loopholes in the gun ban, such as the detachable military features and weapons that would be kept in circulation. Also, the affirmative mentions their definition and refers to the legal definition as my definition. But in this round, there is no definition that is mine nor my opponent's. There is the legal definition of the assault weapons ban that would apply to assault weapons, which is, as I stated, that an assault weapon is a semi-automatic rifle with detachable magazines and 2 or more military-style features. Therefore, the cosmetic loopholes on a gun would still apply, and the lethality of a gun would not be qualified under the definition of the assault weapons ban. It would be very easy for an assault weapon to continue to be used, simply appearing to not be an assault weapon with still the same amount of lethality. And secondly, we cannot pass both the alternative of gun control regulation and the assault weapons ban, because in the real world, there are limitations put on the government. It is not simply a question of whether Congress would want to or not. They have to take certain things into consideration, such as funding, public approval, the fact that the government and Congress is Republican and Democrat, 2 parties that take completely different sides on both arguments. And while I cannot tell you why Congress has not chosen to pass the weapons ban yet, what I do know is that they have not passed it, and that comprehensive gun control has failed in the past. Therefore, we must be selective in what we choose to pass. You either pass the gun regulations alternative, which I provide to you, or you pass the assault weapons ban. And there really is only the gun regulations alternative in this round that solves for both everyday violence and mass shooting violence that occurs. Because, as I said, the loopholes in the assault weapons ban allow everyday gun violence to occur because it does not apply to the handguns and such, and also it allows mass shootings to occur because the lethality is not reduced in a gun under the assault weapons ban, simply whether it appears to be an assault weapon or not. And passing a plan similar to the Firearms Act, which is to obtain a firearms license, you must undergo a screening process, is a better solution. Because instead of looking directly at the guns, we must look at the people who have these guns in their possession and for what purposes they have them, how they have obtained them. In the United States, there are so many loopholes to the regulations we have on guns now, like how a person can show up to a gun fair and buy a gun without any type of background check on who they are and why they are using these guns. That is what we must focus on, because doing that will solve for both everyday violence and mass shooting violence that is occurring, while the assault weapons ban only makes it more difficult for these regulations that actually solve to be passed. It is either the alternative or the ban, and the alternative solves for all instances of gun violence better.